What if I told you that the most expensive wedding of 2022 ended with a murder before the honeymoon even began? You've probably seen those fairy tale celebrity weddings splashed across social media, the ones with million-dollar dresses, celebrity guests, and enough flowers to fill a small forest. You know, the kind that makes you scroll through every photo, wondering what it would be like to live that life. But what happens when the cameras stop rolling and the last guest goes home? Have you ever wondered if you truly know the person you're with? That person you share your bed with, your secrets with, your future plans with? How well do you actually know them? What if everything they told you about their past was a carefully constructed lie? Here's the problem: we live in a world where anyone can reinvent themselves with a new name, a fake passport, and enough charm to fool even the wealthiest, most powerful people on earth. Social media profiles can be fabricated. Stories can be rehearsed. Entire identities can be purchased. But here's what money can't buy: the truth. And when that truth comes crashing down, the consequences can be deadly. On May 15, 2022, in the glittering city of Dubai, billionaire Rashid Al Mansouri married the woman of his dreams. By sunrise the next morning, she was dead, and he was planning her funeral instead of their honeymoon. This isn't just another story about domestic violence, though it absolutely is that too. This is about what happens when two people carrying explosive secrets collide in a world where image means everything and truth means nothing. It's about a woman who ran from her past only to have it catch up with her on what should have been the happiest night of her life. The official reports called it a tragic accident. The family called it an unfortunate fall. But the real story? The real story involves Russian blackmail, fake identities, corrupt police, and a cover-up so complete that it would make Hollywood jealous. Before we go any further, if you're interested in more true crime stories that expose how the wealthy and powerful operate above the law, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if this opening has already got you hooked, smash that like button to let me know you want to hear the whole shocking truth. Because by the end of this story, you'll understand why some secrets are worth killing for, and why others are worth dying for. So who was Isabella Moreau? And what secret was so devastating that it cost her everything? The Golden Wedding. Dubai in the spring of 2022 was experiencing another one of its legendary boom periods. The city sparkled with new construction, cryptocurrency millionaires, and social media influencers documenting every moment of their tax-free paradise lifestyle. Into this world stepped Rashid Al Mansouri, a name that carried serious weight in the Emirates. At 38, Rashid wasn't just rich, he was generational wealth rich. His family owned half the premium real estate between Dubai Marina and Palm Jumeirah. His personal portfolio included luxury hotels in the Maldives, private jet companies, and enough political connections to make diplomats jealous. But for all his success, Rashid was obsessed with one thing above all others: reputation. In Emirati culture, family honor isn't just important, it's everything. One scandal can destroy decades of carefully built respect. Rashid knew this, lived by this, and had spent his entire adult life making sure the Al Mansouri name remained spotless. Enter Isabella Moreau. She arrived in Dubai in 2020 like a character from a movie, tall, elegant, with dark hair that caught the desert sunlight and emerald eyes that seemed to see right through you. Her accent was exotic but impossible to place. French? Italian? Maybe Eastern European? In Dubai, where half the population comes from somewhere else, nobody asked too many questions. Isabella quickly established herself in the city's elite social circles. She modeled for high-end fashion brands, attended charity galas, and somehow always knew exactly what to say at dinner parties filled with billionaires and royalty. She was sophisticated without being intimidating, mysterious without being distant. When Rashid first saw her at a polo match in 2021, he was captivated immediately. Here was a woman who could match his lifestyle, understand his world, and look stunning on his arm at international business conferences. Their courtship read like something from a romance novel: private helicopter tours over the city, dinner dates on yachts in the Persian Gulf, weekend trips to private islands. The proposal came 6 months later on a 200-foot yacht anchored off the Burj Al Arab. Rashid had the entire Dubai skyline lit up with fireworks while a string quartet played Isabella's favorite classical pieces. She said yes before he even finished the question. But not everyone was celebrating. Layla Al-Mansouri, Rashid's mother and the family matriarch, had reservations that went beyond typical mother-in-law concerns. Something about Isabella felt manufactured, too perfect, too convenient. Her stories about her past were always vague. Her family never visited. Her social media presence only went back 2 years, unusual for someone her age. Layla quietly hired a private investigation firm, not some local Dubai company, but an international outfit with connections in law enforcement across Europe and Asia. She wanted Isabella's life story investigated from birth to present day. The initial reports came back clean. Almost suspiciously clean. Isabella Moreau appeared in French records in 2019. Before that? Nothing. No childhood photos on social media from family members. No school friends posting throwback memories. No paper trail of employment, education, or even medical records. For a woman supposedly from an old French diplomatic family, Isabella's past was remarkably invisible. But Layla decided not to press the issue. The wedding was already planned, invitations sent to heads of state, deposits paid to vendors across 3 countries. Sometimes, in wealthy families, it's easier to hope for the best than to confront inconvenient truths. The wedding itself was spectacular by any measure. The anonymous warning. The Al-Mansouri family estate stretched across 12 acres of the most expensive real estate in the Middle East. For Isabella and Rashid's wedding, no expense was spared. White orchids flown in from Thailand created canopies over tables seating 400 guests. The ceremony itself took place at sunset, with the Dubai skyline providing a backdrop that photographers would later describe as otherworldly. Celebrity guests flew in from Los Angeles, London, and Moscow. Business titans worth billions shook hands with royalty. Instagram influencers documented every golden moment for their millions of followers. The hashtag Rashid and Isabella trended worldwide. Isabella looked radiant in a custom Valentino gown that reportedly cost more than most people's houses. Rashid, dressed in traditional Emirati formal wear, couldn't stop smiling as he watched his bride walk down an aisle covered in rose petals that had been flown in that morning from Ecuador. The vows were in English and Arabic, with translations provided for international guests. When Rashid promised to protect and honor Isabella for all the days of my life, the assembled crowd erupted in applause that could be heard from the neighboring compounds. The reception featured performances by world-famous musicians, a 7-course meal prepared by Michelin-starred chefs, and enough champagne to float a yacht. Guests danced until the early hours while fireworks lit up the Arabian Gulf. But at 11:47 p.m., as the last of the guests were saying their goodbyes, Rashid's personal phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The text was simple, just one line. You don't know who she really is. Check her past before it's too late. Attached was a single photograph. The image was grainy, obviously taken from some distance, but it clearly showed Isabella, or someone who looked exactly like Isabella, standing next to a man in what appeared to be a Russian police uniform. They weren't just standing together, they looked comfortable with each other, familiar. The man's hand rested on her shoulder in a way that suggested intimacy. Rashid stared at the photo, his mind racing. Isabella had told him she'd never been to Russia. She'd claimed her modeling career had taken her across Western Europe but never further east. So who was this man? And why was someone sending him this photo on his wedding night? His first instinct was to delete the message and forget about it. This was supposed to be the happiest night of his life. Isabella was upstairs in their suite, probably already changing out of her wedding dress, waiting for him to join her. But something about the timing felt deliberate. Whoever sent this photo had waited until after the ceremony, after the public commitment had been made, after it would be most devastating to receive this information. Rashid looked around at the remaining guests, mostly family members and close friends, all of them celebrating what they believed was his perfect marriage to his perfect bride. He needed answers. And he needed them tonight. Anya's hidden truth. The confrontation began gently. Rashid found Isabella in their master suite, sitting at an antique vanity removing her jewelry. The room was a study in luxury, silk wallpaper, marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Arabian Gulf. Under different circumstances, it would have been the perfect setting for a romantic wedding night. Rashid showed her the photo without saying a word. Isabella's reaction told him everything he needed to know. Her face went completely pale, then flushed red, then pale again. Her hand started shaking as she set down her diamond earrings. "I can explain this," she said quickly. "It's not what it looks like." But Rashid had spent his entire adult life in business negotiations. He could read people's faces, their body language, their tells when they were lying. And Isabella, his new wife, was lying. "Who is he?" Rashid demanded. Isabella tried several different stories in rapid succession. First, she claimed it was a modeling shoot with a costume theme. Then she said it was a stranger who had asked for a photo. Finally, she insisted the image had been doctored, that someone was trying to ruin their marriage. But Rashid kept pressing, his voice getting harder, more demanding. He'd built a business empire by never accepting the first answer, by digging until he found the truth. And he could sense that Isabella, whoever she really was, had been lying to him about everything. Finally, around 2 a.m., she broke down completely. "My name isn't Isabella Moreau," she sobbed. "It's Anya. Anya Petrovna." The confession came flooding out like water through a broken dam. Anya had grown up in poverty outside St. Petersburg. Her father died in a factory accident when she was 12, leaving her mother to raise 2 children on a cleaner's salary. By 18, Anya was desperate to escape the grim reality of post-Soviet Russia. She'd been blessed with extraordinary beauty and saw modeling as her only ticket to a better life. Moscow in the early 2010s was a dangerous place for young women trying to break into fashion. The modeling industry was controlled by oligarchs and their associates, men who saw beautiful girls as temporary entertainment rather than human beings with futures and dreams. Anya quickly learned that legitimate modeling work barely paid for her tiny apartment. The real money came from attending parties, being seen with the right people, making wealthy men feel important. She told herself it was just business networking, just playing a role. But the parties got darker. The men got more dangerous. And one night in 2018, everything went horribly wrong. She was at a penthouse party hosted by a prominent businessman named Viktor Kozlov. The alcohol flowed freely, along with drugs that Anya had never seen before. Around 3 a.m., an argument broke out between Viktor and another oligarch over a business deal gone bad. Anya was in the bathroom when she heard shouting, then a crash, then silence. When she came out, Viktor was dead on his marble floor, his skull crushed by what appeared to be a heavy crystal decanter. The other guests had vanished. Only Anya remained, standing over a dead man in a penthouse filled with evidence of illegal activities. She should have called the police immediately. But in Putin's Russia, young women from nowhere didn't call the authorities on dead oligarchs. They became scapegoats. So Anya ran. She made it to her apartment, packed a single suitcase, and disappeared into the Moscow underground. Through connections in the modeling world, she obtained forged documents identifying her as Isabella Moreau, a French citizen. It cost her every ruble she had saved, plus several favors she preferred not to think about. But she wasn't free yet. Sergei Volkov, the corrupt police officer in the photograph, had been Viktor's partner in several illegal ventures. He knew Anya had been at the party. He knew she'd run. And he decided that made her the perfect target for a very profitable blackmail scheme. If you've ever wondered how far you'd go to escape your past, drop a comment below. Because Anya was about to discover that some secrets never stay buried. When rage turns deadly. For 2 years, Anya lived in constant terror. Sergei Volkov's blackmail scheme was brutally simple: pay him €5,000 every month, or he would contact Interpol with evidence that Isabella Moreau was actually Anya Petrovna, a wanted fugitive from a murder investigation in Moscow. It didn't matter that Anya was innocent of Viktor's death. Volkov had enough connections in the Russian police to manufacture whatever evidence he needed. A few planted fingerprints, some doctored security footage, maybe a witness who suddenly remembered seeing Anya with the murder weapon. The monthly payments kept coming, draining Anya's modeling income and forcing her into increasingly desperate situations to make ends meet. But in 2020, she saw her chance to escape when a modeling agency offered her work in Dubai. The Emirates didn't have an extradition treaty with Russia for financial crimes. More importantly, Dubai was full of wealthy men who might offer her the kind of protection that money could buy. She broke contact with Volkov, changed her phone number, and reinvented herself once again as Isabella Moreau, successful international model. For 2 years, it worked perfectly. She met Rashid, fell genuinely in love for the first time in her life, and began to believe she might actually have a happy ending. But Volkov never forgot about his most profitable blackmail target. As Anya finished her confession in their wedding suite, Rashid's face went through a series of expressions: shock, disbelief, rage, and finally something much more dangerous: cold calculation. "So you're telling me," he said quietly, "that I just married a fugitive from murder charges? In front of my entire family. In front of government ministers and international business partners. Rashid, please, I never killed anyone. That's not the point." His voice exploded across the room. "The point is that you lied to me about everything. Your name, your nationality, your past, your family, everything." Anya tried to approach him, her wedding dress rustling against the marble floor. "I was going to tell you. After we were married, after we were safe, I was going to explain everything." "Safe?" Rashid's laugh was harsh and bitter. "Do you have any idea what this could do to my family's reputation? What happens when this gets out? When the newspapers start investigating the Al-Mansuri family's connection to Russian organized crime? It won't get out. Volkov can't prove anything. The only evidence he has is what? Photos of you with corrupt Russian police? Evidence that my new wife has been living under a false identity for years?" Rashid began pacing the room like a caged animal. Everything he'd worked for, everything his family had built over generations, was now at risk because he'd fallen in love with a woman who didn't even exist. "We can fix this," Anya pleaded. "We can pay Volkov whatever he wants. We can hire lawyers, private investigators. With your resources my resources." Rashid spun around to face her. "You think I'm going to spend my family's money cleaning up your criminal problems? You think I'm going to let you drag the Al-Mansuri name through international headlines about murder and blackmail?" The argument escalated rapidly from there. Anya tried to explain that she'd never intended to hurt anyone, that she'd genuinely fallen in love with him, that she'd been planning to tell him the truth. But Rashid was beyond listening. In his mind, every kiss they'd shared had been a lie. Every intimate conversation had been a performance. Every moment of their relationship had been built on deception. The first blow came when Anya tried to leave the room. Rashid grabbed her arm, harder than he'd ever touched her before, and spun her around. "You're not going anywhere," he snarled. "Not until we figure out how to clean up this mess." When Anya tried to pull away, Rashid's control finally snapped completely. The beating that followed would haunt him for the rest of his life. The power of money and influence. Dr. Farid Qureshi had been the Al-Mansuri family physician for over 20 years. He delivered Rashid's younger siblings, treated his grandmother's heart condition, and maintained absolute discretion about every medical situation he'd encountered within the family compound. So when his phone rang at 4:17 a.m. with Rashid's voice on the other end, panicked, incoherent, begging him to come immediately, Dr. Qureshi asked no questions. He simply got dressed and drove through the empty Dubai streets to the Al Mansouri estate. What he found in the master suite would have tested the discretion of any medical professional. Isabella lay motionless on the marble floor, her wedding dress torn and bloodied. Her face was swollen beyond recognition, her skull clearly fractured in multiple places. Rashid sat in the corner, his hands covered in blood, staring at nothing. Dr. Qureshi checked for vital signs he already knew he wouldn't find. Isabella had been dead for at least an hour. "What happened?" he asked quietly. "She fell," Rashid whispered. "She was trying to leave, and she fell down the stairs." There were no stairs in the master suite. But Dr. Qureshi had been treating wealthy families long enough to understand when the official story was being constructed in real time. Within 6 hours, the Al Mansouri family's crisis management team was in full operation. Layla Al Mansouri, despite her previous reservations about Isabella, now focused entirely on protecting her son and the family reputation. She made a series of phone calls to people whose names never appeared in any directory but whose influence extended deep into Dubai's power structure. The first call went to Police Chief Mohammed Al-Zahra, a family friend whose children attended school with various Al Mansouri cousins. The second went to Ahmed Hassan, editor-in-chief of Dubai's largest newspaper, whose publication had received generous advertising contracts from Al Mansouri companies for over a decade. By noon, the official story was set. Isabella Al Mansouri had suffered a tragic fall in the early hours after her wedding celebration. The family was devastated by the loss of their beloved daughter-in-law. Rashid was too grief-stricken to speak to media but was grateful for the prayers and support of the community. The police investigation was perfunctory at best. 2 officers arrived at the estate, spoke briefly with Dr. Qureshi, and filed a report concluding that the death was accidental. The case was closed before most of Dubai had finished their morning coffee. The international media, initially interested in the story of a billionaire's bride dying on her wedding night, found themselves unable to get access to any meaningful information. Family spokespersons referred all questions to a brief written statement. Hospital officials claimed privacy concerns prevented them from discussing details. Police reports remained sealed indefinitely. Rashid himself was quietly transferred to a private medical facility in Switzerland, officially to recover from the trauma of losing his beloved wife. The facility specialized in treating wealthy individuals who needed to disappear from public view while dealing with various personal crises. Meanwhile, halfway around the world, Sergei Volkov was found dead in his Moscow apartment, an apparent suicide. The Russian police investigation was even briefer than Dubai's had been. The official conclusion: Volkov had been despondent over gambling debts and chose to end his own life. If you believe that justice should apply equally to everyone regardless of their wealth or status, share this video to help spread awareness about how money and influence can bury the truth. The cover-up was complete, professional, and absolutely effective, uncovering what really happened. But money can't buy silence from everyone. 3 months after Isabella's death, investigative journalist Sarah Chen began receiving anonymous tips from sources inside Dubai's social elite. The tips came from wedding guests who'd noticed things that didn't add up, household staff who'd heard arguments, and family friends who questioned the official story. Chen discovered that several wedding guests had witnessed Rashid and Isabella having what appeared to be a serious argument during the reception. One guest, a prominent Dubai socialite, remembered seeing Rashid checking his phone repeatedly during the dinner, his expression growing darker each time. A security guard at the Al Mansouri estate told Chen, off the record, that he'd heard screaming from the master suite around 3 a.m., followed by a period of silence, then frantic phone calls. When he'd attempted to check on the situation, he was told by family security that his services were no longer needed and he was escorted off the property immediately. Dr. Qureshi, when approached by Chen, refused to comment beyond the official statement he'd given to police. But a nurse at his practice privately confirmed that the doctor had seemed deeply shaken when he returned from an emergency call in the early hours of May 16. Most telling of all, Chen discovered that Isabella's friends in Dubai had organized a small memorial service for her 1 month after the funeral. During that service, several people mentioned that Isabella had seemed nervous and distracted in the weeks leading up to her wedding, as if she was worried about something from her past catching up with her. One friend, a model named Katrina Volkov, revealed that Isabella had confided her fears about someone from Russia who might try to cause problems for her new marriage. Katrina had advised Isabella to tell Rashid the truth about her past, but Isabella was terrified that he would reject her. Chen's investigation hit walls at every official level. Police officials wouldn't return her calls. Government spokespersons referred all questions to previously released statements. Even international news organizations found their requests for information ignored or actively blocked. But the story refused to die completely. Isabella's friends continued to hold annual memorial gatherings, sharing memories of a woman they described as kind, generous, and desperate to build a better life for herself. They remembered someone who'd been running from something terrible but who genuinely believed she'd found safety and love in Dubai. Social media posts using hashtags like #JusticeForIsabella and #WhatReallyHappened began appearing sporadically, usually from anonymous accounts that would be deleted within days. The truth, it seemed, was determined to surface despite every effort to bury it. But in a city built on the dreams of people trying to reinvent themselves, some stories remain whispers in the wind. Justice denied, lessons learned. 18 months later, Rashid Al-Mansouri married Fatima Al-Zahra, daughter of a prominent Emirati business family. The wedding was smaller, more traditional, with guest lists carefully vetted and media access strictly limited. Rashid appeared to have recovered completely from his tragic loss. His business empire continued to grow, his family's reputation remained intact, and Dubai's social elite welcomed him back into their circles without question. The official story never changed: Isabella Al-Mansouri had died in a tragic accident on the happiest night of her life. But this case teaches us several crucial lessons about domestic violence, power, and justice. First, domestic violence doesn't discriminate based on wealth, status, or social position. It happens in marble mansions and public housing projects alike. The difference is that money can buy silence, influence can control narratives, and power can ensure that justice never arrives. Second, when we create a culture where image matters more than truth, we enable abusers to escape consequences for their actions. Rashid killed his wife not just out of rage, but because protecting his reputation mattered more than her life. Finally, every person deserves the right to reinvent themselves and escape their past, but not at the cost of honesty in their most important relationships. Isabella's deception was born from desperation, but it contributed to the tragedy that claimed her life. The Al-Mansouri family moved on. Dubai moved on. The world moved on. But somewhere in the desert sands outside the city, the truth remains buried, waiting for someone brave enough to dig it up. If this story has opened your eyes to how domestic violence is handled differently depending on the victim's social status, please subscribe for more investigations into crimes that the powerful try to hide. And leave a comment sharing your thoughts on how we can better support domestic violence survivors regardless of their background. Because Isabella's story doesn't have to end in silence.